You're watching Fugitive Red-Eye, and welcome to yet another episode of Takeshi Tuesdays. Once again, we're talking about Takeshi's films, and again, a film he directed, wrote, and starred in, Achilles and the Tortoise. Achilles and the Tortoise was released on September 20th, 2008, and runs for approximately 119 minutes, so almost 2 hours. Achilles and the Tortoise is the final part of Takeshi's surrealist autobiographical trilogy. However, with this one, there's one key difference. He's not actually playing a character that is supposed to be himself. Yes, it is a surrogate for himself, because it is a character heavily inspired by his own life. However, it is not a character named Takeshi Kitano, nor is it supposed to be a fictionalized version of him. It's a character named Machisu. And Takeshi only plays him in, the last third of the movie, because you actually get to see Machisu's entire life. Achilles and the Tortoise is a very interesting movie. I actually think Achilles and the Tortoise is the second best part of the surrealist trilogy that he did, with Takeshi's being the best and Glory to the Filmmaker being the worst. Achilles and the Tortoise follows a boy who becomes obsessed with painting, and he wants to become a successful painter. So he spends his entire life trying to paint pictures and try to become a successful painter. If you don't know, Takeshi himself actually is an accomplished painter. Throughout this movie, however, Machisu struggles horribly with trying to be successful, to the point where his entire life starts passing before his eyes. Relationships with his family begin to fall apart, and everything seems to go south around him because he's just too obsessed with the painting. The movie itself is actually named after an old parable of Achilles and the Tortoise. If you're unfamiliar with the parable, it's very similar to the Tortoise and the Hare. It's where Achilles, the Greek figure, the god-like character who's supposed to be invincible and fast and really and good at everything, basically, goes up against a tortoise in a race, but he gives the tortoise a head start. But he gives the tortoise enough of a head start that he'll never fully catch up to the tortoise. He'll always be slightly behind him, and that's the message of the movie, is that the main character's goals are always just out of reach, and he'll never fully catch up to them. And that's the whole premise of the movie. And it's a very good movie. It's a very sad movie. Not sad in the sense that a lot of his other movies are, but it's sad because you see a character's life kind of falling apart, and him never really accomplishing his goals because they're always just out of reach. Surprisingly, Achilles and the Tortoise didn't get that well of reception. The only thing I can find is one review from the Japan Times where this guy named Mark Schilling only gave it 2 out of 5 stars, whereas I think it's easily a 4 out of 5 stars, if not a 4.5. I actually really like Achilles and the Tortoise. Like I said, it's not as good as Takeshi's, but it's much better than Glory to the Filmmaker, and it's one of Takeshi's best movies, in my opinion. Especially considering it's one of his non-Yakuza movies, and his Yakuza movies tend to be my favorites. But Achilles and the Tortoise is definitely worth watching if you want a story that tells a character's entire life and is filled with sadness, and It's a very interesting look at it. It's his only movie that he's done so far, where you get to see a character's entire life chronicled throughout the film. So I highly recommend checking it out if you haven't seen it. For Achilles and the Tortoise, I actually had to import the DVD from Japan itself, but luckily the Japanese DVD had English subtitles on it, so I was still able to watch it no problem. But anyway, that does it for this episode of Takeshi Tuesdays. This has been Fugitive Red-Eye. Have a great rest of the day.
I'm gonna fucking die here, Jack!